So welcome everyone. And today we have a privilege to hear from an extraordinary leader whose journey embodies resilience in the face of adversity. With over two decades of experience in international development and global healthcare, our speaker has navigated crisis situations and life and death challenges across continents. As seasoned mountaineers, she has scaled some of the world's highest peaks and discovered that the true transformation begins where our comfort zone ends. This unique perspective has shaped her approach to the leadership development, blending cutting-edge neuroscience with immersive outdoor experience. She founded Leadership Coaching Outdoors and developed a signature Explore, Adapt, Impact framework designed to help leaders step back, reset, and lead with renewed confidence and purpose. Today, she will share insight, how to cultivate resilience and clarity. Please join me welcoming Melanie Shudofsky.
Thank you very much, Delan. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining this webinar today. I'm really honored to be contributing to International Coaching Week. So let's dive straight in. I would like to start with this life-changing event. It happened 10 years ago. Here I'm standing on the summit of the Eiger. It's one of the famous mountains here in Switzerland, and it has one of the biggest north faces of the Alps. Now, my way to the top, everything went perfect. We were in time. I just had the chance to take this picture on the summit. As you can see, we didn't have good visibility, so we needed to head down pretty quickly. So as I descended, I unfortunately had an unexpected fall. And it was so severe that I needed to rehabilitate for a year. I had to quit my job, which was back then my dream job. And that moment forced me to reassess and recover, and ultimately make one of the most important decisions of my life. And that whole experience was an eye-opener, again, for me, that the challenges we face actually hold the key to our greatest growth. Now, during my rehabilitation, I incorporated life-changing but very simple methods, which we will explore together in today's webinar. We'll learn about the fine line between growth and stagnation, stress and balance, and how to stretch ourselves without breaking. And it's all about building resilience, embracing the journey, and using the tools that help us bounce back stronger. So in today's webinar, even if you're tired or overwhelmed currently, or even busy multitasking, we will explore what happens when stress hits the brain. You will learn how to spot stress signals early. And we will explore 4 types of stress reset strategies, which are really practical. And we will learn about a compass, how we can stay grounded no matter what. So it's going to be a very practical session, and I'm sure anyone can learn something from it today. Before we dive into a little bit of theory, I would like to start with a quiz. And for this quiz, there are either true or false answers. So you can just type them into the chat, your answer, true or false. So let's start. The first question is, prolonged stress eats away your brain. True or false? Please answer in the chat. I can see your answer, so I can check what everyone has answered. Oh, wow. Really good. Yes, it's true. Because when we face longer periods of stress, we release cortisol. And in the long term, it's really our enemy. Because when cortisol is released over longer periods, it damages our hippocampus. And our hippocampus is responsible for producing new brain cells. So in the long term, it causes impaired memory performance and also an increased risk of cognitive decline. So it really has serious implications. Well done. Everyone answered correctly. So the second question, true or false, deadlines and challenges can trigger positive stress. Sometimes. Vertanen? Yeah, very good, excellent. It's true, because if we deal with deadlines and challenges, norepinephrine and noradrenaline is being released, and we need that to create new memories, and it improves our mood, and problems look like challenges. It creates new thinking. So deadline and challenges help us trigger these beneficial effects of stress, as long as this type of stress isn't continuously over a prolonged period of time. Thank you, Natalia. Well done. You already know a lot. The third question, perceiving danger when not actually being in danger can activate the same level of survival response. True or false? Excellent. Yes, it's true. Because what happens when we experience a threat, although our body physically isn't in threat, our amygdala, which is our center for fear and threat, is also being triggered when we perceive danger without being actually in danger. The next question, resilience is a personality trait. True or false? Okay, most of you have answered false, not sure. Someone answered true. It's false, because resilience is a practice. With brain plasticity, our brain can be changed through training. And with resilience, it's all about introducing small habits and learning to use effective strategies. So it's not a personality trait, it's a practice that we can learn. And the final question, so far you've done really well, excellent. The more we experience stress and challenges, the more resilient we become. True or false? Here the answers are a bit mixed. True, but at a cost, Shakira says. False, true. Okay, this is the first question where there are some mixed answers. Now the answer is false, and we will learn about this today during this webinar. When we experience prolonged stress, our brain starts to rewire and we become more sensitive to stressors, to triggers, and not stronger. Well done. Thank you for answering. Excellent. So before we dive into building resilience and stress relief strategies, it first helps when we have a deeper understanding of stress from a brain perspective. So what happens inside the brain when we experience stress? Now here you see an image of the brain. So it's cut in half. And all these parts, let's see if I can, So all these consists of the limbic amygdala. And here you see the amygdala, which is actually just as small as an almond, so really tiny. But this tiny part, the amygdala, has the control panel when it comes to our stress response. And I can tell you our amygdala is quite the drama queen, and it has gotten way too much power. Now this entire part is the part for survival. It makes a difference between life or death, and it will come up with the most ideal survival strategy, activating all sorts and parts of our system. Now in this image, you can see that when the amygdala is being activated, so if we perceive something as danger or as a threat, it sends signals to the brainstem here, which controls breathing, heart rate, blood pressure. It says, I need all the available resources to get out of this alive. It then sends signals to the prefrontal cortex, which is here. It's responsible for logical, rational thinking. And it's telling, no, there's no worry, just shut up, you'll be fine. But the limbic amygdala, it's a very old structure, and it's very, very strong in its response. So it will say, no, you need to run. And there's this friction between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The one says run, the other says no, you'll be fine. We'll just figure out the best options. But if we are not so much aware of our response and we haven't learned the right tools, our amygdala will take over no matter what. So the amygdala signals the hippocampus, which is responsible for the formation of new memories, and it also signals the hypothalamus, where hormones are being regulated. Now, everything happens for a reason, and a good way to think about this is what pain is for our body is stress for our mind. It's an alarm signal. So the message will always be warning, danger. And that's why it is so important, not only for our health, but also for our work performance and especially decision-making, to understand how our brain works and what it sets in motion under stress. Now, when we experience or perceive a threat, the brainstem activates 3 available resources, leading to different strategies. So let's have a look at them. And depending on the situation, our amygdala will pick one out, although most of us have a preferred response. Let's have a look. So the first response, you might have heard of the fight, flee, freeze responses. So the first is the fight. Now, what actually happens from a brain's perspective is that blood rushes towards our arms, hands, and jaws. With the fight response, it's all about intimidation. We become defensive. We have a feeling of superiority, and it's all about power. So this tension that is being built up in our neck and arms and jaws, it results in our voice becoming louder, our movements become stronger, and we really try to focus on our target. Now, with the flee response, we feel a bit more anxious. Fleeing is all about movement. So we start shaking, touching a ring or a pen. And sometimes we need to go to the bathroom 10 times just in a row because we feel like, oh, we need to move. Our voice starts shaking and basically our head becomes a mess. It says, run for your life. Now, with the freeze response, it's all about searching for protection. So when we feel under pressure or we feel stressed, we get this feeling that we're not capable to deal with the situation. So we feel a bit of helplessness. We think, oh no, I can't do this alone. And we start to talk slower. We use less words, and overall our energy level lowers. Now, if we are in this state for a longer period of time, so if we suffer from chronic stress, for example, and our response is to freeze, we can also, it can result into a depression. We can get difficulties breathing. Basically, our brainstem is in control here. Now, with procrastination, that can be both a flee or a freeze response, depending on the situation. Now let's do a quick poll. It's about which stress response is mostly your default. So which stress response is most familiar to you when you feel stressed or if you are in an acute situation? Yeah, so the results are that 55% has chosen fight, after which comes flight with 25%, and then 20% the freeze response. I'm actually really proud of you all that you could answer this question, because it's actually not that easy for some. Because when we are stressed, we are often caught up just in this really strong feeling. And as you now know, it rules out the prefrontal cortex. So usually in that moment, we're not that much aware of how we respond. So thank you. Thank you, Joe. Yes, perfect. All right. So thank you for answering the poll. Now, there's an image. You don't need to know all the details, but it's just to show you when we experience pressure or stress, all sorts of organs are being activated in our body. So what we see is that our kidneys, they start to produce adrenaline and cortisol. Our heart rate increases, our blood pressure increases. We have a decreased appetite because our digestive system starts to slow down. Our liver starts to produce glucose. Our lungs, our bronchioles are dilating. So just that we are aware that if we feel stressed or we feel pressure, it's not just inside of our head that we think, oh, okay, I'm feeling quite tense, but actually our whole body starts to respond. Now, you've probably heard the saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But from a brain perspective, especially when it comes to chronic stress, that's simply not true. Because when stress is constant, your amygdala, the brain's fear and threat detection center, doesn't get tougher. It actually becomes hyperactive and more sensitive. So that means it starts to react to smaller stressors, and it does so more intensely. So for example, if previously, sitting at your desk, it wasn't a problem, you would just work the day away. But when the stress increases, suddenly maybe the printer, which is next to your desk and blowing, that can be very much a stressor. Suddenly you start noticing it. So it's all about that your amygdala gets these signals faster. It becomes more sensitive. So over time, chronic stress rewires the brain for reactivity and not resilience. So instead of building strength, it lowers our capacity to cope. And what happens? It had quite an impact if we feel stress over a prolonged period of time. It enlarges the amygdala, so it gets more fear signals. It weakens the prefrontal cortex, so there will be less rational thinking. Also, decision-making will be impacted. And it reduces the hippocampus volume. So, as you remember, the hippocampus is the place where new brain cells are being produced. So, chronic stress directly impacts our memory and learning. And of course, stress isn't all bad. When stress is short-lived and balanced, it really becomes the spark and not the fire. So it helps us to focus, to put a bit more power behind our actions. So it's all about stretching, but not stretching too much, so you will snap. So it's all about finding the right balance. D'Angola, with also frequent exposure to telephones, computer could lead to chronic stress. Yes, so there's a lot of research also going on. Thank you for your question. The exposure, it has different dimensions. It has also to do with dopamine, but also the radiation. So from different aspects, yes, also exposure to telephones and computers could lead to chronic stress. Thank you. Now, we've explored stress from a brain's perspective, and now let's continue to exploring 4 practical categories of stress relief strategies that build resilience in the long term when you incorporate them into your daily life. So as you've now learned, resilience is not a fixed personality trait, it's a skill we can build. And with stress relief strategies, we actively build our resilience. And with brain plasticity, it means that these tiny, consistent actions to relieve stress in the very moment, that changes how we respond to stress. Now, to build resilience, we need strategies that can relieve stress instantly. It's really about in the moment, so we learn to desensitize our amygdala. And I call it the stress relief square, with thanks to Gregory Karamans from the Brain Academy. So these are 4 different types of strategies. And while we go through the strategies, I would love you to think for yourself what resonates. Maybe what do you already do, or what could you try? You may also answer that in the chat. I'm happy to see what you're already doing and what new ideas pop up as we go through these different strategies. Now, the cognitive strategies, here it's all about thought disruption and reframing. You may be known with the fact that our brain thinks up of a whole story of what could happen based on nothing. Or maybe when something has happened, we still reproduce stories, different versions of what actually happened. Now, the reason for this is that our hippocampus learns from previous experiences. So as soon as our brain notices, I don't have all the answers, it will fill in the blanks where information is missing. And that's a very powerful trick of the brain, which will continue to do so. If we can't control the following pattern, it will drive us nuts. So when that happens, it's all about recognizing patterns. We make associations. We do that continuously. We jump quickly to conclusions, and then suddenly we perceive a situation or a person as a threat. So it's all about disrupting this thought loop. So we switch from the reactive amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, which is the reflective and rational reasoning. And I really like this image because it shows very well the difference between our stress brain, so what happens, the amygdala taking over, trying to rule out the logical thinking, or when we're not feeling stressed, or we have learned strategies to override the amygdala, we have all these benefits of the prefrontal cortex. So problem solving, being creative. Instead of being reactive, we start to be intentional about our actions. Now, some examples of cognitive strategies. These are just several examples. Of course, there are many, many more, like meditation, or anchoring maybe a negative situation to a positive memory. So you can override forming of a negative situation. Sometimes it just helps to say, you know what, I just need to go through this. This too shall pass. Or a perspective shift. Will this matter how I feel right now? Will it matter in 10 years' time? Probably not. Now, for the physical strategies, it's all about releasing buildup from stress hormones through movement. Now, what happens? When stress is triggered, our body turns on its engines, like I showed in the image before with all our organs. So oxygen-rich blood is being produced. We make extra glucose. It's all about building up tension and turning on the turbo to get ready to fight or flee. However, in our modern-day society, instead of running away from wolves, we sit at our desk. We deal with an exploded inbox or maybe an angry customer on the phone and so on. But actually, in that moment, our whole physiological pep talk is to do what our body is prepared for doing, and that's movement. So by all means, movement is actually one of the most effective strategies for reducing stress and building resilience against future stress triggers. So some easy strategies to incorporate in a busy life. It's like walking meetings. You can also do dancing moves instead of walking. I mean, even if you are walking towards your desk or to the bathroom, you can do some dancing moves. Maybe other people will laugh. That will, again, have a beneficial effect. Of course, playing with kids or with your pets and using the stairs is a really good way instead of using the elevator. Or if you feel a little bit pumped up, maybe with testosterone, installing a punching bag could do the trick as well. Now, for sensory relief strategies, it's all about calming the nervous system via sensory input. Now, with these strategies, we need to be aware to balance it right, because if the intensity becomes too strong, we rather feel pain instead of pleasure. So that's something to be aware of. But with the sensory strategies, it's all about me time. So here are some examples. For example, breath work, breathing exercises, going to the sauna, spending time in nature, maybe some soothing music, also between meetings, that really helps. Massage, that's like moving without moving. It stimulates your body muscles, and actually cortisol levels lowers up to 53% after massage. And one of the most important sensory relief strategies is, of course, sleep. Now, with the emotional strategies, it's all about connecting with others to release the stress. Now, something really interesting that I found out through a research study is that until the 1990s, women were excluded from stress studies because their hormones were seen as disruptive. And this actually led to an incomplete model. It's based mostly on the male stress response, fight, flight, freeze, which we covered before. But under stress, our bodies also release oxytocin, and that's the bonding hormone. And research has found out that oxytocin promotes trust and connection, and this reduces cortisol building. And there's been a study that when people used social strategies, there would be a 0 increase in heart risk under stress versus 30% increase in heart risk when they would only use the fight and flight response. So oxytocin, you're connecting with others when you feel stressed, is a really important stress relief strategy. Now, some examples for emotional stress relief strategies, petting an animal, hugging someone, of course, with mutual consent, asking for help, but also offering help without expecting anything in return. Just laughing, using humor, practicing gratitude, just sending a colleague a nice message, or before you go to bed, what are you grateful for this day? And if you feel emotions are building up very strongly and you have the feeling you need to cry, please do, because tears are full with cortisol and adrenaline. So literally, if you cry, literally your cortisol is being poured out. Now, with all these strategies, the most important thing is that you do what works for you and that you do it wholeheartedly. So if you're thinking, okay, yes, tomorrow I will just go to the park in my lunch break. So you walk for 5 minutes and then suddenly you take your phone and you see, oh no, I need to answer this email. You do that quickly, then you walk, oh wait, there's another message. Of course, that doesn't work. You really need to be fully in the moment. You need to do it wholeheartedly. Now, I would love to see in the chat what has resonated with you and which of these stress relief strategies speaks to you at this very moment. I would love to see some inputs there. Sensory. Thank you, Helen. Connecting with others. Yes, Beat. Yes, they all work depending on the moment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Emotional, people, pets, gratitude, lots of hugs. Yes, hugs are great. Thank you, Joe. Playing with kids. Oh, Saba, I think you need to turn it to that everyone can see your response. Soliman, sensory strategy. Yeah. connecting with others or doing an exercise or some. Great, thank you. Yeah, so, everyone has a strategy that works for them. And I also hope that through these examples, maybe you also have some new inputs to try out. Oh, Josh recently told not to cry by a family member when they told me terrible health news. So I'm really interested what you said about the crying. Oh, yes. Yes, no, especially not only kids, grown-ups, it's good for all of us. Yes, it instantly releases stress. Yeah, I'm glad I could help you with that insight. Yeah, that your head keeps working in the problem. Yes. Well, Sam, thank you for sharing that, because that's exactly what we will focus on now, how to interrupt those thought patterns. So exactly what you are saying, Osam. In that moment, even if we realize how we are responding and that we feel pressure or stressed or angry, whatever emotion we are feeling in that moment, it's also important to be aware, okay, what can I actually do in a real life moment of stress, in that very moment? So let's look at a simple tool you can use anywhere at any time. And I call it the 1-minute reset tool. Now you can take a print screen or a photo, you can just carry it with you, or if you notice, behind your desk or in a certain place you experience this triggered stress response, you can just put the 1-minute reset tool up there to remind you that you can actually relieve the stress, the emotion in real time. So let's have a look. So if we would think, for example, your inbox is exploding. And then on top of that, you're just opening an email, a very rude email that you think, oh my gosh, well, what do I need to do with this? So let's go through these steps. I will use this example. Now label what's happening. Okay, I just opened up my inbox. I already have 999 emails which aren't opened yet. And in addition, I have this email by a person who I don't even know. And he or she is being very rude. Now move your body. As we know, when stress is triggered, our brain wants us to move. So just shake it out. Name the emotion. I really feel annoyed right now. And notice it in your body. Yes, I feel it in my hands. I feel like I want to, move my legs. In that moment, open your posture and breathe. And in that moment, choose what you want to do. Proceed with intention. Now, this is a really strong tool. It may sound even too easy, but actually it works. It immediately activates your awareness. It releases stress instantly. And you also learn to name what you are feeling. So giving the emotion a name, it helps you to ground, to localize the stress. And it also calms the nervous system. And then you can proceed. Now let's do a mini practice. We'll try it now together. You don't need to write it in a chat, but just go through this with me and we'll do it together. Name your current mood. Roll your shoulders. Take one open belly breath. And what shifted in this very moment? Now, when you do this type of exercise, actually what happens in that very moment, even when it only lasts for a couple of seconds, you are fully present. You are not only stuck in your head, thinking, about what you need to do. Like Osam mentions, it keeps working, the problem. But in that moment, nothing else exists. You start to ground and you pause for a second before the amygdala takes over. So this is a really powerful mini practice. Now for this last part of the webinar, I would love to go through how we can build resilience continuously throughout our busy days. So let's look at an all-encompassing tool you can take with you anywhere. It's the Resilience Compass, and you can think of this as your brain's multivitamin. It consists of 6 elements: L, M, N, N, O, P. LMNNOP or LMNNOP. After a while, you will get used to this acronym. You'll get better at it. But once you have it, it's really powerful. And with these elements, it is what wires together, fires together. So the more you can combine them, the stronger the positive effects for your brain health. And the more regularly you integrate them daily, the stronger your resilience will be. So what are they? Now, I won't go through them one by one because I will be sharing with you your mini brain balance assessment at the end of this webinar. And in there, you can also read about the different elements, their benefits, and I also mentioned several examples. But with the LMNOP, it's scientifically researched that these elements increase your resilience, and it's all about micro habits. So don't start big, but just try to incorporate with, just very small micro habits in your daily life. So for example, with love and connection, send an appreciative message. With movement, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. Or stretch, take 5 minutes break behind your desk to stretch. But also nature, if you don't have the time to really spend a longer time in nature, it has been researched that even a plant on your desk or even an image of nature releases stress instantly. So it's all about micro actions. Now, when you complete the mini assessment for your brain balance, it's helpful to reflect upon the following questions. Which resilience building element comes naturally to you? And which element do you tend to neglect? And what small thing you will try today? And it's all about starting, which can be difficult in the beginning because our brain wires very strongly. So if we're not used to incorporating micro habits throughout the day, in the beginning, it takes a little bit more effort. But once you start, and that's why I recommend starting with small actions, once you start, it will rewire your brain for resilience. Now, as with any journey, it's important to pause and reflect on where we've been. So let's take a moment to recap the key insights we've explored today. Now, we have discovered how the brain and body respond to stress. We have learned about the fine balance between healthy and unhealthy stress. And we've explored why resilience matters and how it can be strengthened. And you've learned practical strategies for restoring and maintaining brain balance. Before we close and move to the Q&A, I would love to share the following. Like mountains shaped by the elements, we grow stronger through life's pressures. And with the right tools and wholehearted efforts, we can maintain our balance and move forward with resilience. Then we've come to the end of this webinar. Thank you so much. Kaylan, I would love you to share the mini brain balance assessment.
Yes.
So for all of great. For all of you, you can then instantly see on which elements for resilience building you maybe need to work a little bit more on, and on which elements you're already doing great. So it's a really helpful tool. And also, if you have questions or would like to learn more after the webinar, please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or through my website. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And we also have some time left to answer any questions you would like to ask now. And lastly, I would love to receive your feedback in the chat, what you thought of this webinar. It also helps me. Thank you.
Now it's time for all the questions you have right now. You can post on the chat or wow.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joe. It's really lovely. Super useful. Thank you, Suimo. Thank you, Dangoli. Important and useful. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you, Hassan. Thank you very much. Yes, definitely. Do I still have time for one question? I see one interesting question. I'll just answer it really briefly because I appreciate it very much. Joe, how do you convince people who don't believe these small steps work? That's, of course, where coaching comes in, because I wouldn't work so much with these strategies if people aren't ready for it, because maybe, there are other things that is blocking them, or maybe there are biases that we need to work on first. So hopefully that answers your question in a really quick recap. Yes, I'm really thrilled to read all the feedback. Thank you so much. I'm really happy that it was helpful.